Number 8. Later Gator. In early 2021, a surprising encounter unfolded for Jacob Breitenbach and his wife Angel, residents of Meerdwell in South Africa's northwest province. The couple's peaceful morning took an unexpected twist when they discovered a massive 10-foot crocodile in their swimming pool. Their pet safety routine, which involved checking security cameras before letting their animals outside, revealed the reptilian intruder lurking at the bottom of the pool. Reacting quickly, the couple sought help from a team of animal specialists to safely remove this unexpected guest from their property. A video captured by Jacob documented the daring rescue operation. The footage showcased the team's audacious attempt to loop a rope around the crocodile's powerful jaws to hoist it out of the water, and amidst the tension, Angel, originally from Australia, offered her guidance, shouting instructions like "jump on its teeth" and "straight on its back." But eventually, after a challenging struggle, they successfully extracted the reptile from the pool, with excited team members exclaiming, "It's a boy!" The crocodile was clearly not happy following its removal from the pool, trolling around on a patch of grass. Jokingly, one of the team members covered the animal's eyes with a cloth, sparking some light-hearted banter. Angel then quipped, "Leave it there, I'll move," maintaining her composure despite the unusual situation. Angel revealed to Storyful that the incident unfolded at 4:30 a.m. on January 29th, when she noticed something large afloat in their pool. Swiftly realizing the danger, she sought professional assistance, praising the team's exceptional handling of the situation. The surreal encounter didn't escape social media, as Angel shared the bizarre footage on Facebook with the caption, "Only in South Africa." The Wild Heart Wildlife Foundation, which played a crucial role in the crocodile's rescue, shed light on the possible reason behind the unusual visitation. They noted that heavy rains from Cyclone Eloise may have displaced the crocodile from a nearby river, leading it to their pool. The Wildlife Foundation assured the public that the crocodile's welfare was a top priority, and they mentioned that the reptile would be thoroughly assessed by the Department of Nature Conservation before being safely returned to its natural habitat. Number 7. Wolf attack. In August 2019, a New Jersey family experienced a terrifying ordeal during a camping trip to Banff National Park, Alberta, Canada, when they were attacked by a wolf while sleeping in their tent. Elisa Rispoli, the mother, described the incident as something out of a horror movie. Her husband, Matthew, courageously shielded her and their 2 sons as the wolf tore through the tent, latching onto Matthew's arms. And in a post on Facebook, Lisa expressed the intense terror she felt during those moments. The attack, although it felt like an eternity to the family, likely lasted only a few minutes. But the situation turned even more dire as the wolf began dragging Matthew away. Fortunately, though, a neighboring camper named Russ Fee heard the family's desperate cries for help and sprang into action. Fee bravely confronted the wolf, kicking it in the back hip area to make it release Matthew. And although he regretted his actions, it forced the wolf to exit the tent. Matthew and Fee then shouted and threw rocks at the wolf, while Elisa and the children sought refuge in Fee's minivan. The Rispoli family eventually made it to a nearby hospital, where Matthew received treatment for puncture wounds and lacerations on his hands. Thankfully, he was the only one injured in the attack, and he was expected to recover. So Elisa expressed gratitude that the situation hadn't escalated to something far worse. Such wolf attacks on humans are exceptionally rare, with this incident being the first reported case at a national site in Canada, according to Parks Canada. Previous attacks had occurred in provincial parks, though, but it's not clear what caused the wolf to attack in this case. There were no significant wildlife attractants or food found inside or near the family's tent, eliminating that as a potential cause. Following the incident, the campground was temporarily closed while Parks Canada investigated. The park staff tracked down and euthanized the wolf, confirming its identity through DNA testing. The animal was in poor condition and was significantly underweight for its age, weighing only 78 pounds instead of the typical 100 to 150 pounds for an adult wolf. Tests for rabies, however, returned negative results. The exact reason for the wolf's aggression toward the Rispoli family remains unclear, but its deteriorating health likely played a role in its behavior. The incident served as a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of wildlife encounters, prompting a sense of caution and vigilance among campers and park visitors. Number 6. Capuchin cannibals. In November 2020, a group of researchers from the University of Tokyo, the University of Calgary, and Tulane University made a startling and somewhat unsettling discovery while studying white-faced capuchin monkeys in the Santa Rosa National Park in Costa Rica. They documented a rare case of cannibalism among these wild primates, a revelation that both surprised and unnerved the scientific community. Cannibalism is a phenomenon observed in various animal species, but it's relatively uncommon among mammals. The researchers had been engaged in a long-term study of white-faced capuchin monkeys when they stumbled upon this disturbing incident. As they observed the monkeys in their natural habitat, they witnessed a tragic event. A 10-day-old infant fell from a tree. The mother rushed to the infant's side, but was unable to revive it, and realizing that the infant had died, the mother eventually left it on the forest floor and moved away. But what followed was an extraordinary and eerie sequence of events. A 2-year-old male approached the lifeless infant and began nibbling on its fingers. Then, shortly thereafter, a 23-year-old alpha female joined in, chewing on the infant's toes and feet. This instance of cannibalism in white-faced capuchin monkeys was unprecedented and deeply perplexing for the researchers. Unlike cannibalism observed in some animals during periods of food scarcity, this particular incident occurred in a group of capuchin monkeys that had no shortage of food. Typically, when a young capuchin monkey dies, the mother removes it from the group, carrying it into the forest. However, in this case, the mother appeared inexperienced and uncertain about what to do when she found her offspring dead from the fall. This may have led other members of the group to resort to cannibalism, a behavior typically considered unusual among primates due to the risk of disease transmission. Remarkably, though, the young male and older female didn't consume the entire infant carcass. After eating its hands and lower extremities, they left the remains on the forest floor. Subsequently, the researchers retrieved the infant's body for further study, as this act of cannibalism raised significant questions and warranted closer examination. This shocking discovery challenged existing understandings of primate behavior and highlighted the complexities of animal behavior in the wild. While cannibalism remains a rare occurrence among primates, the observation of such an event among white-faced capuchin monkeys provided researchers with valuable insights and underscored the importance of continuous study and exploration of the natural world. Number 5. Barred owl territory. A woman named Kirsten Matheson had a startling encounter while walking alone in the woods near her Hansville, Washington home in November 2022. She was attacked by an unexpected assailant, a white barred owl, which left her with a painful injury to the back of her head. The attack occurred without any warning, surprising Matheson, who'd previously seen the owl without any issues during her walks. Upon returning home with a bloodied and cut scalp, Matheson sought medical attention. Her doctor recommended a tetanus shot to prevent potential infections from the owl's claws, which carry bacteria. She also attempted to avoid the owl's territory by changing her walking route temporarily, but the owl struck again a week later, causing even deeper cuts and more bloodshed. Seeking answers and support, Matheson turned to Reddit when local wildlife authorities were slow to respond. Some Reddit users humorously suggested curses or a missing Hogwarts acceptance letter. But then, Matheson discovered several similar stories of aggressive barred owl encounters in Washington state. A runner in West Seattle shared a similar experience and found a unique solution by wearing an owl mask on the back of her head to deter attacks. And in the city of SeaTac, a local park put up warning signs about owl-related risks. Jonathan C. Slatt, a wildlife biologist with the Wildlife Conservation Society, confirmed that the animal Matheson encountered was indeed a barred owl. He explained that barred owls are territorial and are becoming more confrontational with humans due to shrinking forested areas where they traditionally nest. And as their nesting sites become scarcer, they're forced into closer proximity with humans, which would explain the uptick in attacks. Slat advised Matheson to alter her walking path to avoid the owl's territory and recommended wearing a hat or carrying an umbrella for protection. Unfortunately, though, he suggested that the owl's territorial behavior might persist because it's likely related to nesting or pre-breeding activities. However, he reassured Matheson that this behavior tends to be seasonal and the owl may eventually move on or become less aggressive with time. Despite her ordeal, Matheson expressed a desire to avoid harm to the owl, acknowledging its beauty while describing it as a pretty tough character. Slat concurred that the situation would likely resolve itself over time, offering hope that Matheson's peaceful walks in the woods could be restored without ongoing confrontations with the owl. Number 4. Near-death experience. In the summer of 2023, Martin Richardson had a harrowing encounter while swimming in Egypt's Red Sea when he was attacked by a mako shark. The shark bit him approximately 5 times, and he found himself in a life-threatening situation, having lost around 5 pounds of blood out of the 8 to 9 pints that are typically in the human body. He believed he was waiting for a feeding frenzy and was resigned to his fate as the shark circled him. However, an extraordinary turn of events occurred when a group of dolphins appeared behind him, causing the shark to cease its attack. Richardson was subsequently rescued by a boat that rushed him to the hospital, where he required over 300 stitches. But he credited the dolphins with saving his life. The incident was featured in the National Geographic Shark Fest show called Saved from a Shark, which examined 4 cases where humans appear to be protected from shark attacks by marine animals. While the concept of animals saving humans is romantic, marine biologist and shark conservationist Tom Hurd noted that it may not be entirely clear-cut in most cases. Mike Hythorse, a professor at Florida International University, suggested that the dolphin's intervention might not have been an intentional act to save Richardson's life. Instead, he explained that the dolphins could have detected the presence of a shark due to the cloud of blood in the water, potentially related to their protective instincts if they had young to safeguard. Hythorse cautioned against anthropomorphizing animal behavior and assuming human-like intentions in such situations. The show also explored another incident involving Nan Hauser, director of the Cook Islands Whale Research, who was saved from a large tiger shark by a humpback whale during a dive in 2017. The whale approached Hauser, pushed her, and lifted her onto its snout. Hythorse pointed out that the whale's behavior resembled that of protecting a calf, suggesting a potential maternal instinct at play. However, the most unusual case involved a group of lifeguards off the coast of New Zealand who were encircled by dolphins while swimming. Unbeknownst to them, a great white shark was approaching. One of the larger male dolphins charged at the lifeguards and the shark, leading to a sudden and mysterious disappearance of the shark. This case left experts intrigued, as it seemed like the dolphins might have genuinely been protecting the humans. Hythorse concluded that in most cases, marine animals are likely not protecting humans out of the kindness of their hearts, but are instead driven by self-preservation or the defense of their young. However, the New Zealand lifeguard incident stood out as a rare example where the dolphin's actions strongly suggested the protection of the human swimmers. Number 3. Jacksonville Rhino. In February 2019, a zookeeper named Pamela Roby was injured in an incident involving a white rhinoceros at the Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission released a report detailing the sequence of events during the attack. Roby, who was 31 years old at the time, was in the rhinoceros enclosure, kneeling and offering a food reward to the rhino, a 50-year-old male named Archie. She had her arm extended through the bars separating them when Archie unexpectedly struck her. The force of the impact threw her through the bars and into the enclosure, and once she was in the pen with the 4,000-pound animal, she was struck again. Roby recalled the feeling of being tossed and tumbled as she attempted to regain her footing. Archie proceeded to drag Roby out of the enclosure and into the holding yard. But it was only after some time that Roby managed to alert a second zookeeper by yelling, "He's got me." The second keeper then closed the gate after distracting Archie long enough for Roby to return to the pen. Remarkably, the entire incident lasted approximately 10 seconds and Roby never lost consciousness. But after everything, she was rushed to the nearest hospital. Luckily, though, she was released the next day so she could finish recovering at home. The FWC report noted that the incident posed no threat to the public and no violations were observed. Tony Vecchio, the zoo's executive director, emphasized that Archie wasn't intentionally attacking anyone. Rather, he described the rhino as scared and confused. Vecchio also explained that something must have spooked Archie, prompting his unusual behavior. Archie had been at the Jacksonville Zoo since 1975 and was born in 1969, and despite the incident, the zoo chose to keep Archie on exhibit with other rhinos. The report then revealed that Roby was expected to recover and return to work soon. The Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens clarified that they wouldn't be making changes to the enclosure, but were reviewing safety procedures and ensuring that all employees were well informed about safety standards. The incident served as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of wild animals, even in a zoo setting, and the importance of adhering to rigorous safety protocols when working with such creatures. Number 2. Unsuspecting beachgoer. In early January 2023, harrowing footage emerged of a juvenile seal attacking beachgoers at Clifton Beach in Cape Town, South Africa, a popular tourist destination. The video, uploaded to TikTok, garnered nearly 2 million views. The disturbing clip shows the young seal darting from the sand into the shallows where a boy is standing. A group of men rushes to the child's rescue as screams erupt and the seal lunges at the boy's legs. Moments later, the video captures shouts for people to get out of the water as the seal approaches a woman in a bikini swimming in deeper waters. Several bare-chested men hurry to her aid, with one wielding an oar. The seal is eventually grabbed by its tail and a flipper before being thrown back into the ocean. Jules Farrell, representing Orca, a marine mammal rescue and conservation group in Australia, explained that seals can become aggressive when people stand between them and the open water. This situation can make seals feel threatened, leading to defensive attacks. She emphasized the importance of never standing between a seal and the ocean, as it disrupts their escape route. Farrell also highlighted the misconceptions people have about seals, often assuming that they're docile creatures due to encounters in zoos and aquariums where they're taught to be approached and even fed. In the wild, though, seals remain feral animals, and approaching them, taking selfies, patting them, or feeding them is discouraged, as it can lead to dangerous interactions. In response to the video and the public's fascination with seals, Australian authorities issued warnings about maintaining a safe distance from seals drawn to popular holiday areas due to warm waters. Leopard seals were seen basking on beaches in the Mornington Peninsula, and an elephant seal was spotted swimming in a canal in Portland, Victoria. To protect both the public and the seals, authorities announced that officers would patrol beaches and issue on-the-spot fines of $277 to anyone who got too close to a seal on land. The regulation stipulates staying 100 feet away from seals, or 165 feet if accompanied by a dog, as the presence of humans and canines can provoke aggressive reactions from seals. Wayne Robbins from the conservation regulator emphasized the importance of respecting distance rules and not feeding wildlife to ensure the safety of both visitors and seals in the wild. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Wild boar barbecue. In March 2023, a man in his 70s named Stephen Easton was attacked by a massive feral pig while enjoying a barbecue in his garden in Otago, New Zealand. Easton had spotted a family of pigs in his garden and attempted to chase away the smaller ones when he was suddenly confronted by a large adult boar. Describing the encounter, Easton said that the boar, which was about 6 to 10 feet away, appeared to be flying straight toward him. Despite having enough room to pass by, the boar made a slight turn and struck Easton. The force of the attack sent him flying over a bank, landing approximately 3 feet away on a lawn. The boar's tusk narrowly missed Easton's eye, but dislocated his shoulder and left him unconscious for about 25 minutes. He also suffered injuries to his nose, mouth, and eye during the ordeal. Wild pigs have become a growing problem in New Zealand, having originally been introduced as domestic pigs in the 1700s. In recent years, though, they've expanded their presence, even infiltrating urban areas such as Wellington, where they've destroyed backyards and harmed domestic animals. These pigs can reach weights of up to 450 pounds and boast massive tusks protruding 6 inches from their faces. Easton's experience has raised concerns for the safety of other residents in his village, as there's been an increase in the number of feral pigs in the area. The couple believes that the pigs may have ventured into town due to changes in their natural habitat, including the cutting down of pine trees on the outskirts of the town and the availability of fruit in urban areas like plum and pear trees. Easton and his wife have called upon local authorities, including the Department of Conservation and the Central Otago District Council, to address the pig problem more effectively. But despite assurances from these agencies that they're controlling the pig population, Easton's wife believes that their presence in the town indicates otherwise. She emphasized the need for someone to take responsibility for addressing the issue, as it poses a significant concern to the community's safety. Number 13. A double dose of revenge porn. Most revenge porn crimes are committed electronically, but one Louisiana woman allegedly decided to go the old-fashioned route in 2020 by mailing intimate photos of 2 individuals to over 24 people. According to the Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's Office, 32-year-old Sarah D. Faris of Sulphur had access to one of the victim's personal information. She was accused of sending degrading letters about the man to at least 30 people, along with copies of his nude photos, and traveling to Texas to mail the letters. Sheriff's Deputy Stitch Gullery told local station Fox 29 that the victim was contacted by multiple people about the letters. The man realized that Faris had access to his social media account because she had helped him set it up years earlier. After learning about Faris's alleged revenge plot, authorities charged her with 150 counts of non-consensual disclosure of a private image. She was released on a $75,000 bond later that day, but soon ended up back in custody on even more charges. Just weeks after her first arrest, Faris was accused of including photos of not 1, but 2 victims in the perverted pamphlets that she sent in the mail. She was charged with another 30 counts of non-consensual disclosure of a private image. Faris was freed on a $15,000 bond and scheduled to return to court at a later date. The outcome of the case is unclear. Number 12. Hilda Nordhoek. 27-year-old Robert Miller arrived at his Wichita, Kansas home one day in 2018 to find a screen door ripped off its hinges, a smashed mailbox, and a window that had been shattered by a brick. Inside, he found his beloved dog beaten to death. Police initially failed to identify a suspect, but continued to investigate the case. In the meantime, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, better known as PETA, offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to the identification and arrest of the person responsible. Miller was devastated by the loss of his 10-year-old American bulldog, who he called Buffalo Boy. Nearly a year later, in early 2019, police charged 30-year-old Hilda Nordhoek in connection with the crime after identifying her through surveillance footage and a license plate reader program. Prosecutors claimed that the woman had a romantic past with Miller and accused her of killing his dog in a jealous rage. In 2021, Nordhoek pleaded no contest to animal cruelty, theft, and burglary, and was sentenced to 30 days in jail plus 2 years of probation. While handing down the sentence, the judge issued a stern warning that if she violated the terms of her probation, she would automatically be required to serve 13 months in prison for burglary, plus 12 months in county lockup for animal cruelty. Number 11. Candace Nicole Jones and Edward Brannon Barry. 10 days after 34-year-old mother of 2 Emily Hacker vanished in early 2017, her body was found in a shallow grave in rural Burleson County, Texas. The contents of the burial were burned in an apparent attempt to destroy evidence, but the medical examiner was able to conclude that the young woman died from blunt force injuries. Investigators quickly discovered that Hacker had been recently pulled over by the police for a routine traffic stop. While searching her vehicle, officers found a gun. Hacker told the cops that the weapon wasn't hers and that it belonged to 32-year-old Candace Nicole Jones, natives of Rockdale. Detectives theorized that Jones murdered Hacker for ratting her out to the police. She and 4 other suspects, including 32-year-old Edward Brannan Barry, were arrested in connection with Hacker's death. Jones and Barry were each charged with 1 count of capital murder. Jones and Brannan both pleaded guilty and were sentenced to 50 years in prison. As part of their plea agreements, they waived their right to appeal their cases. According to records, they will both become eligible for parole in 2042, and their latest release date is in 2067. Number 10. Yasmin Walker. A very unfortunate British man was enjoying a movie at the cinema one day in 2021 when he began receiving text messages informing him that his nude photo had been posted on social media. His ex-girlfriend, 30-year-old Yasmin Walker, had shared the intimate snapshot with her 1,300 followers, along with a sarcastic comment asking, "What the bleep is that?" followed by a laughing emoji. The victim begged Walker to delete the post. She finally complied when the man threatened to call the police, but by then, the damage was done. Authorities charged Walker with disclosing a private photo with the intent to cause distress. Walker claimed that she posted the photo by accident and blamed her poor vision for clicking the wrong button. During her trial, her attorney argued that his client suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder stemming from multiple abusive relationships, although none of those relationships were with the victim in the revenge porn case. In fact, Walker claimed that her vision was bad because of injuries that an ex-boyfriend caused during an attack. The defendant's lawyer also told the court that Walker suffered from a nearly decade-long marijuana habit and that she was trying to kick the habit for good. While the judge took these factors into consideration, he also thought that it was important to sentence Walker appropriately for her actions and to set an example by imposing a punishment that showed that this type of crime will not be tolerated. Walker received a 3-month reduced prison sentence in what the judge described as a short, sharp shock so that people know revenge pornography means prison. Number 9. Kenesha Rice and Sheldon Johnson. 39-year-old Kenyana Edwards made the fateful decision to drive drunk after leaving a nightclub in early 2023. She drove the wrong way along a Las Vegas highway and collided with another car at 2:30 in the morning. Edwards and the other driver both died at the scene. A toxicology test later revealed that Edwards' blood alcohol level was more than 3 times the legal limit when she got behind the wheel, and she also had cocaine and marijuana in her system. Tragedy struck again the very next day when Edwards' boyfriend, 35-year-old Martin Loftus, was found dead in his apartment with multiple gunshot wounds. Evidence at the scene suggested that the shooter had followed Loftus down a hallway as he tried to run into a bedroom to hide. Based on witnesses' description of a vehicle that was seen leaving the apartment complex, along with other pieces of evidence, investigators identified the suspected killers as Kenyana Edwards' brother, 34-year-old Sheldon Johnson, and his girlfriend, 36-year-old Kenesha Rice. According to police, Johnson had made posts on social media implying that he blamed Loftus for his sister's death. He also allegedly alluded to his plans to murder Loftus as revenge for Edwards' death. Johnson and Rice were arrested in California and extradited to Las Vegas, where they each faced charges of open murder, conspiracy to commit murder, burglary, and conspiracy to commit burglary. Number 8. David Crawford. Investigators in 6 counties across Maryland spent 2 decades trying to solve a string of nearly a dozen arsons that started during the early 2000s and resulted in multiple families losing their homes and/or vehicles. Several of the fires were set when the victims were asleep in the middle of the night. Miraculously, all of the families who were targeted in the years-long crime spree managed to escape the flames without physical injury. Law enforcement wasn't even sure if all the crimes were connected until 2020, when they discovered evidence in the aftermath of yet another arson that finally led them to a suspect. The victims had a history of disagreements with former Laurel Police Chief David Crawford, who had retired back in 2010. A closer look into previous cases revealed even more connections between Crawford and past victims, who all had a history of issues with the former top cop. The targets included former colleagues, a chiropractor, and even Crawford's stepson. Evidence at the crime scenes showed a repeated pattern of the culprit using gasoline as an accelerant, and at least one of the crimes was captured on home surveillance footage. During a search of Crawford's home in 2021, investigators found evidence further connecting him to the crimes, including a list of targets. And while they were able to connect Crawford to the crime using forensic evidence, his grudges against the victims proved to be the big break in the case that led to the rest of the discoveries pointing toward his possible guilt. The accused serial arsonist was finally arrested in March of 2021. He was charged with 58 counts in 4 different counties, including Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Frederick County, and Howard County. Following a months-long trial in early 2023, a Howard County judge convicted Crawford of 8 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 3 counts of arson, and 1 count of malicious burning in connection with 3 separate arsons. He received 8 life sentences, 6 of which are to be served concurrently, plus 75 years behind bars. As long as the conviction and sentence stand, the 71-year-old will never be released from prison. Crawford has maintained his innocence throughout the case and continues to do so as he awaits trial in various other counties. He plans to appeal his conviction despite facing at least 4 more attempted murder charges and at least 3 counts of first-degree arson. Number 7. Michael Keatley. A group of 6 men were playing cards and drinking beer outside a home in Ruskin, Florida on Thanksgiving Day in 2010 when a minivan pulled up to the property. Armed with a shotgun and wearing a shirt that said "Sheriff" on it, the driver exited the vehicle and told the men he was looking for someone who went by the nickname Creeper. The group knew Creeper, but he wasn't at the gathering. Suddenly, the armed visitor ordered everyone to the ground. Believing that he was a real cop, the friends followed the man's orders. But he wasn't a police officer, and he proceeded to shoot the men one by one, killing 28-year-old Juan Gutron and his 22-year-old brother Sergio Gutron. The other 4 victims survived their injuries. Police were initially at a loss to identify the suspect, who fled the scene before law enforcement arrived. A few days after the shooting, an informant told investigators that a local ice cream man, Michael Keatley, had recently been talking about his plans to get revenge on a pair of thieves who had robbed and opened fire on him 11 months earlier. The masked gunman shot Keatley 5 times, leaving him permanently disabled, and made off with $12 that they stole from his truck. Keatley had mistakenly suspected Creeper of being one of the thieves, when in reality none of his 6 victims had anything to do with the robbery. As it turned out, they were targeted in a disturbing case of mistaken identity. Authorities arrested Keatley several days after the crime, and he spent the next decade languishing in jail until the case went to trial in 2020. His defense attorneys argued that he was medically incapable of committing the crime due to his injuries from being shot months earlier. They also accused the police of carrying out a faulty investigation, which they described as nothing short of a nightmare. The first trial ended in a mistrial, and the case dragged on for 3 more years. In 2023, more than 12 years after the shooting, a second jury found Keatley guilty of 2 counts of murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. He was sentenced to 6 concurrent life terms without the chance of parole, and he reportedly plans to appeal his case. Number 6. Seoul subway slaying. While working for the Seoul metro system in South Korea's capital in 2019, John Ju-hwan expressed an interest in a 28-year-old female co-worker. The woman rejected his advances, but he refused to take no for an answer. Instead of respectfully backing off, Jeon persisted in his attempts to woo his colleague, calling her more than 300 times and begging her to date him. When she continued to turn him down, the crazed admirer threatened to hurt himself. Over time, John's behavior escalated from annoying to terrifying as his stalking campaign became increasingly aggressive. He even installed a hidden camera in a workplace bathroom and threatened to blackmail his co-worker with the videos he captured. After dealing with the unwanted advances for 2 years, the victim reported John to the police in 2021. She filed a second complaint a few months later. Authorities charged John with stalking, illegal filming, and threatening, and he was fired from his job. Prosecutors attempted to detain Jeon pending the outcome of his case, but they failed to obtain the court's approval to hold him in custody due to his low risk of fleeing. No order of protection was issued for the victim, who was essentially left to deal with the situation on her own as Jian continued to terrorize her. After being convicted in connection with the woman's first complaint and sentenced to 9 years in prison, Jian appealed his case. He remained free even as he continued to harass and intimidate the victim, including with demands to settle his criminal case in a way that was favorable to him. On the day before Jian was scheduled to be resentenced, he hid inside the employee bathroom wearing a swim cap and rubber gloves and waited for his co-worker to enter. He brutally stabbed the woman to death at the end of her shift, sparking widespread public outrage over the missed opportunities to prevent the tragedy from happening in the first place. Jian admitted that he killed his victim as an act of revenge for getting him in trouble with the law. When the woman refused to settle his criminal case, he became intent on murdering her. The obsessed killer was convicted of murder. Prosecutors pushed for the death penalty, but the court sentenced Jian to 40 years in prison, followed by 15 years on an ankle monitor. The woman's murder happened right around the same time South Korea implemented a new anti-stalking law, and yet the policy failed to protect her. In response to nationwide protests, the country's president, Yoon Suk-yeol, ordered the Justice Ministry to improve the legislation. Lawmakers removed a clause that previously banned authorities from prosecuting suspects without a victim's consent, which arguably put victims at risk of retaliation from the accused. Stalking suspects are also now required to wear an ankle monitor even before sentencing. These long overdue changes came amid a years-long battle to improve legal protections for victims of gender-based violence in South Korea. And while many activists continue to campaign for additional improvements, the heightened policies mark a major step in the right direction toward keeping victims safe and holding perpetrators accountable. Number 5. Jake Bellotta. When 22-year-old Jake Bellotta's PlayStation disappeared in 2018, he suspected his former roommate, 24-year-old Joshua Barnes, of stealing the console. Barnes had recently been evicted from their apartment in Maitland, Florida for not paying his rent, and Bellotta believed that his ex-roomie had broken back into the unit and stolen the video game system, along with a bong and a marijuana scale. A third roommate, Ian McClurg, would later tell investigators that Bellotta was beyond pissed about the alleged theft and that he had punched a hole in the wall during a fit of rage. Bellotta's anger only grew when he heard that Barnes was supposedly bragging to people about stealing the PlayStation. In addition to being outraged, Bellotta was worried that the talk would inspire others to burglarize his apartment. Intent on getting his PlayStation back, Bellotta devised a plan to lure Barnes to the residence. He invited his former roommate to a made-up event, promising that there would be women there. When Barnes arrived at the apartment, Bellotta stabbed him to death in a frenzied knife attack while McClurg watched. Bellotta and McClurg planned to wrap Barnes's body in garbage bags and remove it from the apartment. But their new roommate unexpectedly arrived home and dialed 911 after discovering the carnage inside. During the call, the roommate told the emergency dispatcher that there was a history of problems between the suspects and the victim, but that he didn't know exactly what had happened because he had just walked in the door. When the dispatcher asked the young man how he knew Barnes was dead, he said that the victim was laying on top of a plastic bag and not moving. He also said that he was afraid that the suspects would do something to harm him and his girlfriend since they were aware of the crime. Thankfully, officers apprehended Bellotta and McClurg before anyone else could get hurt. Bellotta claimed that he killed Barnes in self-defense, but his story didn't hold up in court. He was convicted of murder and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. McClurg pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact and tampering with evidence and received a 10-year prison sentence. Number 4. Gruesome gangland execution. Residents in New York City's East Harlem neighborhood were sent running for cover one evening in April of 2023 when a young man was shot in the head at the intersection of East 123rd Street and Lexington Avenue. A local hairdresser named Sochna later told the New York Daily News that she heard around 4 shots. The moment the gunfire broke out, she and other terrified civilians took shelter in the back of her hair salon, where they prayed that no stray bullets would pierce the storefront's glass entrance and strike them in their path. Paramedics rushed the victim, 26-year-old Hector Delgado, to the hospital, but it was too late to save him. Members of the community were left shaken and exasperated by the violence, which some said happens too often. Police arrested the accused shooter, 23-year-old Trevor Gibbs, 3 weeks later. According to prosecutors, Gibbs murdered Delgado as revenge for the point-blank execution 3 days earlier of 19-year-old Jalen Duncan. The slayings came amid an ongoing feud between gangs, and investigators believe that Delgado's murder was also linked to the drug trade. Gibbs faces 1 murder count along with a weapons charge. 5 more suspects were charged in connection with the crime, including 24-year-old Andre Clark, who faces a murder charge. 20-year-old James Figueroa, 21-year-old Ethaniel Coleman, and 25-year-old Ibrahim Ndaya were each charged with 1 count of attempted murder. All 5 of the men and a 6th suspect, 21-year-old Kevin Major, were hit with conspiracy charges. They're being held without bail at Rikers Island while they await the next steps in their cases. Number 3. Robert Manor and Victor Gray. In January 2018, 55-year-old Raymond Wright vanished without a trace from his workplace in Rockland, California. He was never seen again. 2 days after Wright's disappearance, his brother encountered a strange man inside Wright's home. The man fled the scene, leaving behind a drinking cup. About a week after that, Wright's abandoned truck was found, but the missing man himself was nowhere to be found. 5 days later, a man named Victor Gray led police on a chase while intoxicated behind the wheel. When law enforcement caught up with him, they found evidence in his vehicle that they later connected to Wright's case, including a bloody raincoat, Wright's wallet, and several other belongings of his. Meanwhile, a DNA hit from the drinking cup that was left behind at Wright's house turned up as a match to Gray. Investigators also discovered a letter from Gray to a man named Robert Manor, complaining about not receiving a payment for what sounded like a hired hit on Wright. 7 years earlier, Wright had crashed his vehicle drunk, causing serious injuries to Robert Manor and his wife. Wright served prison time for the accident, but his mysterious disappearance and the evidence connecting Manor to the case led detectives to believe that Manor never let go of his grudge against Wright for the crash. In a rare case of authorities pursuing a murder case without a body, prosecutors accused Manor of hiring Gray to murder Wright as revenge for the previous DUI crash. A jury convicted both men of first-degree murder, and they were each sentenced to life in prison without parole. Wright's body remains missing to this day. It's understandable that Manor was upset with Wright for the life-changing consequences of his decision to get behind the wheel drunk, but 2 wrongs don't make a right, and Manor's refusal to move on from the incident in a healthy and legal way only hurt him more in the end by taking away his freedom. Number 2. Marquis Goodwine. During the pre-dawn hours one morning in July of 2023, 18-year-old Lovell Brown left his home in Sanford, Florida on foot with his mother and several other family members to go buy some snacks. Along their walk to a nearby Circle K convenience store, the family crossed paths with a group of 3 to 4 people who were heading in the opposite direction. According to Brown's mother, Parlett Ramsey, a man from the group approached her son and an altercation broke out between the young men. The fight quickly escalated to blows and then gunshots. In what can only be described as a mother's worst nightmare, Ramsey stood by helplessly as her son collapsed to the ground. A bystander performed CPR in a desperate attempt to revive the young man, but he died from his injuries. Authorities charged the alleged shooter, 18-year-old Marquis Goodwine, with Lovell's murder. Ramsey recognized the suspect as someone her son had gone to high school with. She told investigators that in the months leading up to Lovell's death, she had received phone calls from several of her incarcerated friends, warning her to move her son out of the area for his own safety. The concerned mother initially heeded the warnings and sent Lovell to stay with his sister in California. He moved back to Florida a few months later and tried to keep a low profile, but the threats continued. On the day before Lovell's murder, someone allegedly threw a heavy rock at Ramsey's residence. Just hours before the shooting, Lovell had received a text message from someone who disliked him, challenging him to go outside. He ignored the harassment and stayed at home until the snack run later that night. According to court documents, Goodwine's cousin told police that she tried to persuade him not to go out that evening, because she suspected that he was in a gang and that something bad might happen. Others reported that Goodwine and Brown were entangled in a long-running feud and that Lovell had beaten up his killer in the past. Goodwine had recently served jail time in an unrelated case, and the rivalry continued even after the two men were given some much-needed space from one another. Authorities believe that Goodwine killed Lovell in an act of revenge over their previous run-ins. The suspect is being held without bail as he awaits trial. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Josue Vasquez. 18-year-old Alyssa Banks was a member of the National Honor Society and the senior class president at her high school in Largo, Maryland. She was looking forward to the next chapter in her life after graduating in 2016. While out on a date with her boyfriend, Deshaun Moore, during the early morning hours a few months later, Alyssa got out of the car to help her beau parallel park. It was just before 2 o'clock in the morning when a group of men approached the couple. A man later identified by law enforcement as 20-year-old Josue Vasquez allegedly opened the door of the car that Alyssa's boyfriend was driving and asked him where he was from. According to authorities, as soon as Moore mentioned that he was from Largo, one of the men opened fire on the couple. Moore survived, but Alyssa died from a gunshot wound to the head. The case went unsolved for 2 years. Finally, in 2018, Vasquez and 2 alleged accomplices, Thomas Jenkins and Daniel Butler, were charged with Alyssa's murder. Prosecutors accused Vasquez of shooting Alyssa to avenge the death of a friend who had been killed at a house party a year earlier, even though neither Alyssa nor her boyfriend were at the house party or involved in the previous killing. Moore reportedly identified Vasquez as the gunman, and a friend of the defendant also claimed that they had overheard him confessing to the crime. Vasquez's co-defendant, Thomas Jenkins, testified in court that on the night of the shooting, he and Vasquez were looking around for anyone who matched the description of someone who had been at the house party a year earlier. Jenkins admitted that he didn't recognize the victims and claimed that the gun he was carrying malfunctioned and didn't fire. Jenkins took a plea deal while the case against Vasquez went to trial. Vasquez's lawyers argued that 2 of the key witnesses in the case were unreliable. They also claimed that the witnesses' testimony was bought and paid for in exchange for leniency in their own criminal cases. Moreover, there were some alarming discrepancies between Moore's description of the shooter as a black man who was at least 6 feet tall and Vasquez, a Hispanic man who stands at just 5 feet 7 inches tall. After considering the evidence, the jury acquitted Vasquez, marking an emotional victory for the defense and a heartbreaking disappointment for the victims' families. If a wild animal made an unplanned appearance at a barbecue you were hosting, would you call all of your guests inside until animal control arrived? Or would you try and take care of things on your own? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.